The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall continue to follow me all the days of this protracted experience of death, and I will dwell in the house of the most super intelligent, power, source, and force of love and creation forever. What's happening? Benton here, rolling out of the Petro in, oh, wait a minute. Where's the exit? Well, we're going out the indoor. Or, yeah, out the indoor. It'll be all right. Nothing is stirring. Nobody's at the fuel. Nobody's moving around. This is how Benton likes it. Let me start my shift about 12:30 a.m. Is it today yet? Because I woke up, it was still yesterday. There's some oversized. And I was going to leave later to try to be nice to the company and give them a fair shot at getting me loaded and maybe turning some miles today. But I realized, oh, we're overweight. Now, we're probably not actually overweight, but we're probably right at that fucking 80K with full fuel tanks. I had no idea that I had driven to the wrong city. For the first time ever in trucking, I went to the wrong place. Now, I've had them tell me the wrong place before. That's another matter entirely. Wait a minute, it's rerouting us. Let's see. We're driving around the scales. Oh, yeah, we're just straight up driving around them. How about that? So that should be interesting. Small highways, limited chances for P brakes, I'm assuming. Yeah, I got to town Sunday and figured, well, might as well go ahead and fill the tanks after intentionally keeping them around half, keeping the tanks about half full for weight saving. Why am I going to 94 East? That can't be right. Where are we going? That doesn't even sound right. Wait a minute. Hang on. Panicking. That is not right. Or is it? Add on. Okay, yeah, we're good. Sometimes these roads are just not named what they should be. It shouldn't be named that. I'm not going 94 East. So why the hell is there a gigantic sign that says 94 East? I don't get it. Went south on 29. The fuck? Although there is a way station out there, but almost guaranteed to be closed. But I looked up on my app, which may or may not be accurate, and it says if I stay on the interstate, there's some scales in the port of entry in South Dakota. It says for whatever reason, the historical data says they're open at midnight and open all day Tuesdays, typically. So I said, all right, we're not. Okay, here's 29 South. Now it makes sense. It's not going to risk it. All you need is the wrong person in a bad mood because I don't want to work at 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning. Oh, look, here comes old Benton. Looks like he's 100 pounds over on the trailer, 1 pound over on the gross. Nail his ass to the wall, right? Yeah, unlikely, but not interested. Not interested in finding out. So away we go. GPS says 4 hours. Probably take a little longer than that. Then we go into the off duty and try to get as many hours as possible off duty to pause the 14-hour clock so we can get loaded. But my dispatcher, he's fairly on top of it. He's probably already got some things in mind. Got a full clock, 69:36. Guess we've already driven 5 minutes. Well, whatever it is. So yeah, all that's happening. I'm gonna have to decide pretty soon what to do with my hair. Was I just wearing a hat way more before? Last year I was truck driving and had long, for me, long hair. And oh, there's our car, our one car on the road out here to mix it up with us. Yeah, there he is. What's he doing? He's playing his cards close to the vest. Now he's letting us over. Well, completely unnecessary to let the rigs over, sir. You can just go right ahead. And now we've just got the one person on the roads up our ass at 49 miles an hour. 3 lanes. They're contented. They're happy. They're doing their job back there. And sometimes I just want to see how long will an American go just 49 miles an hour glued to the tail of a big rig for no fucking reason. When all he had to do if he chose to was hit the old turn signal to the left, get in the fast lane, maybe speed up from 55 to 60, and then really no reason for us to have met this way, but he slowed down and let me over because that's considerate apparently. Not considered as riding my ass. But now we'll see. Will the 65 zone motivate them? But again, remember, it's the only car out here. There's nothing out here except the car glued to my tail. Within 90 seconds of merging onto as I was merging onto the interstate, this happened. And so don't tell me I'm not spiritually attacked. There's your waking dream, surrealistic, unreality, deja vu all over. I'm not speeding up, sir. I don't know what to tell you. We can go 13 miles to my exit, I guess. But I don't know what to say. I'm going 49. And so are you. Bizarre. This is your country, folks. So the defenders of the indefensible system, perhaps I've ran them all off, but by now, okay, let's just hammer down. Let's now see if they come along with us. So we're hammering down, but we're too heavy to really accelerate. Yep, just right there, speeding up with us. And this is where I wish I could go about 90. And I'm convinced they would just go 90. They're happy going 49 or 90, as long as they can be behind that rig. But anyway, maybe they'll take the exit. Oh, yes, they're taking the exit. Fantastic. As are we all. As are we all. Trust that you're well. Trust that you are well. Had an incident at Walmart yesterday. It is interesting navigating some of these waters with a far greater emotional control than I've had in the past. And for how much of a high testosterone wild man I can be, historically, I'm fairly well. I managed to control the chaos, if that's a thing. But uh, I've had enough of these Hispanics giving me dirty looks all over the place, and I don't know if they're Mexican or not. But I got the first. This now the first guy was he was more scared than anything else because he was working at the Walmart from Guatemala or wherever he's from, and kept looking at me, and I just walked over and showed him some love. You know, hey, how are you? Have a good day. Blah blah blah. Of course, he understood not a word of it. I shouldn't say, of course. Some of them are, somewhat conversational. Although maybe he was too terrified to show that. Maybe he was too scared to say anything. But old Benton here can have a bit of a disarming effect. But then I went back in for some watermelons later, since I ended up in the parking lot because fortunately, we discovered before I went to make the delivery to the wrong place that I was actually in the wrong state, hilariously. But so we devised a plan to wait until today, deliver the load today instead of yesterday, and then that way I could finish my 34-hour restart to get more hours on my 70. And I'm self-checking out, and I look up, some fucking Hispanic mean mugging me. I'm just okay. Something's got to happen. I at least got a signal to the universe. This is not going to continue. So and he had his buddy with him. I chased him down. I was like, "Hey, man," I said, "I don't appreciate this mean mugging." And then, of course, he tries to act like he doesn't know what I'm talking about. I said, "Man, you know." Also, he basically tried to act like he didn't know what was going on. So I was self-checking out. I said, "I looked up. You just looking me dead in my face with disdain and looking at me like I'm a piece of garbage." I said, I'm over this, man. I said, y'all gonna have to knock this off. I said, I'm not having it, And nobody tried to intervene, thankfully. But and you forget how short these people are. I'm like looming over these guys, like with my 5'9". It's like, good Lord, this is crazy. And I wasn't mad at them. It's just like, look, man, I'm done. I've had my fill. I'm saying something from that. I mean, it's either that or just I look up. I'm like, hey, bro, what are you looking at? I mean, I almost gave him one of them. Hey, man, what? Like, fuck or fight, bro. What's going on here? You ain't my type. Let's move it. Let's just move it along. Huh? What? I don't think they know where they're at. Probably thinks he's watching some kind of AI generated video on his phone. Telling him all about La Migra and all this. Meanwhile, guess who is not historically in a border patrol? Because ICE is border patrol. Do people even know that? Right? Immigrations and custom enforcement. The whites are at the fucking facilities, man. They send people of color out into the streets for the most part. Now, I'm sure some of these, whatever's going on in the cities, some of that's white boys, I'm sure, because, like Dick Gregory said, most of these white boys is psychopaths and killers. You don't even know who they are, right? So yeah, once they're like, oh, it's on, you mean we're cracking fucking skulls in the streets? Yeah, you got a whole bunch of white boys that are showing up for that. They'll transfer from, maybe they're in the IRS or whatever. Whatever government agency has fucking armored vests and guns, right? Batman utility belts. Scum. I've never liked these people, ever. And now I'm the Mr. Peanut. It's funny, man. I guess if you grew up in Latin America watching these TV novellas and shit, it's like, bro, look at me. I'm a little too handsome to be a motherfucker covering his face and, oppressing the fucking women and children and the working people in the streets of America. Like, what are you talking about? I'm physically fucking fit. I look like I could be in the movies, and I think they're brainwashed. Like these, especially this AI, everybody's way too fucking good looking in the AI, right? It's pretty much already, an avatar, right? It's like everybody's kind of already got their avatar. I see a lot of people now sort of stylizing, if they have YouTube channels. Truckers are bad about this. They have some sort of AI stylized version of what they would look like if they were physically attractive and fit. Right. I was on the trucker forums, and it's this idea that this Sean Duffy or whatever the fuck his name is he's fixing trucking. So somebody had like a political style cartoon, and whether AI did this or maybe somebody who draws political cartoons. Alex Jones at a certain point unearthed some bozo that was doing a lot of a particular style of cartoon there for a while. And so it had a depiction of this Secretary of Transportation for the feds, like, wearing like khaki pants, like a lumberjack flannel, but it was completely open because he had a wife beater underneath, and his like flat stomach. He's, like 190 pounds of muscle, right? And he's got a chain over his back, and there's a whole bunch of crashed big rigs in the ditch. And on top of the big rigs, it's got all these problems in the trucking industry, foreign drivers and non-domicile and all this stuff. Fraudulent CDL schools. And then he's wrapped a chain around the whole mess, and he's pulling it out of the ditch, right? But if you look at the man, he's way more likely to have a fucking muffin top and a bird chest than this strapping, if he's 50, he looks 35 with a little gray in his hair in the cartoon version. And I just posted, I said, man, this reminds me of something that I might expect to see come out of North Korea with the dear leader, right? Where all the depictions of him, have to be a certain type of way. I said, this is fucking harmful, man. This is bad for people's brains. This guy's probably got a muffin top, This guy's not fit, right? What do you think his body fat percentage is? It's got to be over 20%. He's a 50-year-old pudgy white guy, right? Yeah, he's not like a bulky dude, so he doesn't look like a fat guy, but like Pillsbury Doughboy, man, just go look him up. And it's also Alex Jones's version of these, letting these pencil neck geeks, Alex Jones, part of how entertaining he can be. And I'm not recommending Alex Jones. I had to tune out when he started carrying the water for Trump, but in any politician, it doesn't matter who he's in favor of. But I couldn't deal with the Trump stuff because the way the mind is set up in the psychology, the moment I say carrying the water for Trump, it's implied that then I would be okay if he was pro Biden or what. It's like, no, none of them. Alex Jones was one of the main people to teach me about the so-called left-right paradigm. And they're more, it's really effectively one party, right? But anyway, it's kind of the same thing here, man. So I think people see these depictions and it's like, if our brains, if individually people's brains were functioning, like, I don't know, man, go get a good look. Like if you ever worked I know I was young trying to pretend to go to college, and I was, for some reason, thought I could be an overnight stalker at Walmart, or maybe they probably conned me into overnight stalking because they were shorthanded, and it took me a few days to realize that this ain't it. I'm not doing this, but. And it also says something about the nature of low wages in America historically, and why do people think this is a brand new phenomenon, the cost of living and jobs don't pay? Because there was a county sheriff in there, sheriff's deputy, doing the overnight stocking at Walmart to supplement his income. And just, a piece of shit, just ill-humored. I remember trying to be affable with him at a certain point. He just wouldn't even talk to me, which is fine. I mean, you don't have to talk to me, but, I think I ran into him at Taco Bell and was like, hey, man, and sort of sneered at me, but whatever. I mean, I don't care, but it's like, buzz cut, but don't even look good with a buzz cut, flat top. It's like, yeah, I used to have a flat top back in the kid and play days. It was kind of a different thing, but I've rocked the high and tight here and there, not too often, but this is not an attractive man here. Kind of a big fucking galoot type of dude too. 6'2", fucking, you know, football player type of guy. Well, we're off the main road now. We're driving around the scales. This might be. I don't think this is the first time. This might be the first time I've ever just intentionally routed around some scales. So it's funny, I guess, if the person is in fear or anger and they're like, hey, and they don't even understand, but oh, there's a white guy catches their eye. It's like, well, exactly. Why are you looking at me? Because I'm devastatingly handsome. I mean, I don't even want to fucking say it like that, but it's really, motherfuckers is ugly out here. I mean, I'm not, again, this is just, and I think since, I'm over the ego part of it, like the so-called ego, I think in the past I probably wanted to believe I was really good looking, and I didn't get the feedback probably across the board. But I could date attractive chicks, but there's ugly dudes that get hot women. I mean, it doesn't even matter. And I don't think I even cared about being handsome, so-called. It was just, I liked attention and, fucking personality defect, I was ahead of the curve on this all roads lead to narcissism. And see, I think that was something in the highway that just took my picture and weighed us. See, if we were too close to that weigh station. See. I'm almost certain that's what that was. So what that is in case there's somebody out at midnight on the interdiction. So if they do open those scales, if they actually open at midnight, I mean, who knows? They might be chasing me down with the mobile scales. It's certainly possible. Maybe I won't speak English if they pull me over. Maybe I'll just laugh and act like it's a joke, like I see on those body cams. I'm pretty sure that thing flashed me and took my picture. Weighed us. So we'll see. I don't know. Looks like there's enough of a shoulder that could pull us over. It's tight though. I guess it'd be somebody up late, right? Versus somebody up early. So I'm counting on the fact that the vast majority of humans is trying to be asleep these hours, realistically. There's nowhere to run to. There's nowhere to hide. I mean, probably have just as much of a chance just not stopping for the scale and hoping they don't notice, just cruising on by on the interstate. I'd probably have just as much of a chance as taking this back route. Anyway. But, and I'm telling you, man, all this stuff with the visual media, and it's really, in my opinion, it's really getting people more sensitive to facial characteristics. And I tried to talk about this on a recent stream, but the women apparently on TikTok got all in a tizzy over this idea of hunter's eyes. Anybody? And see, I don't hear about this stuff, but eventually it filters out of TikTok and it ends up in some YouTube content, gets remixed. And I look in the mirror one day and I'm like, yep, I got the fucking hunter's eyes and I'm pretty, right? Because a lot of, if you actually hear a chick just telling you what she's, thinks she's looking for in a guy, they'll say masculine, but also a little feminine, right? It's like, the men who are considered the most attractive are also, there's dominant masculine facial features and good facial symmetry, but also a little pretty. Like, great. Don't hate me because I'm beautiful. And so, whether they know it or not, males are also susceptible to this sort of thing. And I'd say at this point, society's actually starting to pay more attention to males' looks than female looks. Well, what was going on in Sodom and Gomorrah in the Bible? Whoever that was, and I'm not no Bible expert, but was it Lot? And whatever his party was, when they rolled into Sodom and Gomorrah and, rented a room or whatever they were doing, pitched their tent, the fucking neighbors came around. And apparently the culture was, here's our daughters, and, take a gander at our daughters. And the locals are like, no, man, send out your sons. Like, what? Right? I mean, and like Dick Gregory said, if God don't destroy this wicked motherfucker, he owes that Sodom and Gomorrah an apology. You're right, Mr. Gregory. Rest in power. May peace be upon you. You're absolutely right, sir. I guess I took the wrong exit to avoid these scales. I wonder, they can't have that shit. They can't have that bullshit set up on every fucking exit. I mean, I guess they can, but they don't. Oh, there's some kind of facility. What's that, a drag strip? What is that? Oh, it's a shooting range. Okay. But motherfuckers look at me dead in my face. And again, it's not, look, most people are fucking pussies, man. Let's just call it what it is. Most people are fucking pussies. And I ain't no badass, and, but I can intimidate a motherfucker here and there. I know that sounds insane, but, a little bit of the bully in me, as much as I don't want to admit it. And I don't fight, so, it's not like we're going to go box each other. And we're old. He was, I don't know, in his 40s probably. I'm 50. It's like, fuck, even if I did fight, I'd probably start rethinking that by about this age, right? It's like man to man, you can't just, like, that don't work, right? You would think you're going to go around looking at men like that as a man. Eventually, one of them's going to be like, hey, buddy, what the fuck? How about we don't do that? And let's be real. All he's got to say is, you're right, man. My fucking government's running roughshod, and it's pissing everybody off. Yeah, great, that's fine. I also don't like the government, sir. I've got a long history of not liking the motherfucking government. Now, bizarrely, I did attempt to join the military at a certain point, but historically, unless drafted, my fucking people we don't go in the military. I guess I'm the black sheep in a lot of ways, but. And some people are stabby. I think about this later because I was, at a certain point, we were standing close enough. If he was stabby, I'd have been in trouble. But got to make a mental note to. But at this point, it's like, fuck, beam me up, Scotty, anyway. Like, I'm not trying to go out and get stabbed and go out, but it's like, fuck, what else is there to do, really? Only thing I really thought about later was, I'd, be ashamed not to spend this 18 G's or whatever I've saved up. That'd be a shame to go out with just money. But does it really even matter at this point? Some people survive that shit. I know a guy got stabbed and almost bled to death. He's a big old gigantic tough guy. I knew him from Eugene and some meth head, and this guy was a meth user, but some off and on, I think he's mostly, a lot of them, they say they've quit, but they still use it. What it is they came out the other end and they've learned how to do it without, the people that say without the drug doing you, which I don't really like that expression, but, or even worse, he does wrong right. It's like, oh my God, douche chills. But um, please, let's not do that. Uh, But so this guy started tripping at the pavilions in Alton Baker Park, dude. And so the meth head, scrawny meth head, seated at one of the tables, at the pavilion, and big dude, Steven was his name, uh, grabbed the dude by the fucking his hair and was smashing his head into the damn picnic table repeatedly, and all the while the meth head's just stabbing old Steven up, and he survived it, but he almost fucking died. I mean, there's people like that, and I'm not saying I'm like that. It's just, how much of this am I going to put up with and maintain? And, I got to be able to look in the mirror and look at a man, right? But it's all silly, and some of this I realize the testosterone's probably trending upward lately. Whatever. Too much testosterone. And most people's pussies. And I wasn't out of bounds. Like, this is, he can pretend like I'm just crazy and tripping, but it's like, motherfucker, look me right. Like, why are you looking men dead? I don't go around looking men dead in their face. But for what? Unless it's going to be, hey man, how are you? And do you know, I can't remember the last time I got a, hey man, how are you? Just, hey man, what's happening? As I keep it moving, that used to exist. I still do that here. Some of that is just like, hey, I don't want to get, I'm trying not to trigger the fuck or fight, because there is sort of a involuntary version of, you might just end up looking at somebody, right? I mean, that happens. You sort of daydreaming. Next thing you know, you're looking at a person. But meanwhile, we know when somebody, I wasn't paying him no mind. We know when somebody's staring at us. I look up and he's just got this horrible, mean expression on his face. I was like, no, man, whatever that is being directed at me, that it does not belong to me, buddy. And you've had some of these types in the so-called truth community that more or less say, well, if we label you this thing and you accept that, then that makes it okay, right? So in a way, like, sure, turn the other cheek, but I mean, damn, at a certain point, am I really transgressing by saying, hey, I saw what you did and I don't like it, and pretty please with sugar on top, knock it the fuck off? Because, I mean, I might be helping him. You just never know who's who out there. Because he might have just said, yeah, buddy, I did it and I'm going to do it again. And it's like, all right, well, now we're going to have to now it's like, all right, what do we do then? Like, fair enough. I guess I'll have to cross that bridge when we come to it then, huh? I guess so. All right. It's just, man, that's just mano, right? Maybe I would meet my Huckleberry at some point. So, oh, it was Huckleberry. Well, it's Huckleberry in my fucking world. If you think Ed isn't aware of the two terms, I don't know what to tell you. Maybe he was taking liberties with the language there, perhaps. He did mock Ike Clanton with inviting him to a spelling contest at a certain point. Let's not forget. And we got the weather coming in tomorrow night, or tonight, I guess, now that it's Tuesday. Get me the fuck out of here. I don't know where they're sending me, but I'm guessing maybe Ohio, en route to Connecticut, perhaps. set me up for? I don't know. It's a good question. Multiple times when I was a young man, I'd be out with my woman, and aggressive dudes would descend upon the pair of us and try to see if they could punk me. There's guys that can't really pull chicks, but if they see, oh, look at her with that pretty boy, you know, well, pretty boy ain't always the entirety of the situation, but that's not always the final word. But that's probably a thing that happens to be aggressive enough against that dude. And then if she sees some cowardice in him, the next thing you know, this other guy might have a shot, right? From his perspective. Meanwhile, I'm sitting there like, hey, no, she came to me, buddy. I don't know what to tell you. Like, you think I went out and found this one? She found me, but whatever. And that was the town I moved to the second half of my senior year. We were, it's a big culture of cruising, and we were parked somewhere just in town, me and her having we liked each other's company. We were having a conversation. Hadn't been dating too long. And some bozo kept showing up and it was hilarious, man. He was like physically driving circles around us in his car, and it was just trying to goad me into fighting him or whatever. But of course, I was from Pine Bluff, and this was, it's all white people in the most isolated part of this Arkansas that actually, but still big enough to have a super center, if that makes sense. A couple thousand people in the town, but it's like, whatever, man. Like, I can't be worried about you. But and then you get into the weird. There's some weird underlying repressed homosexual thing about that level of aggression. And see, same thing here in the Walmart. Like, you can kind of say, well, Benton, that's also you expressing. It's not always gay necessarily, but I'd say it's almost always an element of that. Either way, but on some level, maybe not in individual cases, but and the macho culture thing comes in. It's interesting food for thought, but I've had my fill. I've turned enough cheeks, right? And now the mind's in the gutter on some level, but that's a prison. The prison, the idea of taking them cheeks or whatever. And I don't even want to be. I've been more graphic lately, I've noticed. I don't know what's up with that, but kind of falling into some terminology that I'd really rather avoid. But it's part of the dead flesh, man. I mean, I don't think it's possible to entirely avoid it across the board. It's just probably not realistic. I had another time on campus. We were walking to a basketball game all the way across campus, and some frat boys in one of them old shitty Ford Broncos, the little ones, which apparently are experiencing a renaissance, become popular on some, but still the big people are into the bigger ones more so. But and I don't even fight, but how I finally got them to go away is I said, okay, I'll fight you, but I'll fight you one at a time. I'm not fighting all three of you at once. That's just crazy. Meanwhile, I was a $135 and every one of them was bigger than me. It's like, can't y'all find your own girls? I mean, what's the point of going in a fraternity? Meanwhile, I'm GDI, goddamn independent. I would have been a big fucking deal legacy if I wanted to go Sigma Chi. And it's like, I didn't even think about it for half a second. My grandfather was a big fucking deal on the campus and was in a fraternity. I was like, it's not me, man. I ain't into that. I got to do me. Apparently, Michael Jordan's out there copping a feel. Y'all hear about that? I can't even really watch. I can't even watch it. So I just heard descriptions of what supposedly went on. But and see, here's a Mandela. This is something that's gotten scrubbed, but uh, there used to be media, and who knows, it's the media, but there used to be reporting in the media that Jordan was traumatized as a kid because he grew up apparently around a bunch of white children in North Carolina somewhere. And, Southerners got this weird thing about not wanting to go swimming with the blacks, which I never understood, but never made sense to me. But that's a thing. Like I famously say about my hometown, that I saw black people everywhere I went except the community pool. I mean, that's the only place where there weren't black folks in my town, but whatever. And yeah, in all the schools and there's a college in town, a historically black, HSBC. But anyway, HSBCU. Um, Apparently, there was this idea that it was maybe a birthday party or something, and like a young Michael Jordan. I can just imagine like a young Jordan with his floaties on or whatever, getting in somebody's backyard pool, and like all the white kids getting out, right? There's some version of that, and then supposedly it pissed him off and made him mad at the world, and they tried to tie that into some of his competitive spirit and all. And maybe it might be in some books about. I have no idea, but it kind of reminded me of that because supposedly they're trying to say he was tickling the boy, but if you look at what tickling is, it's actually like torturous and aggressive at the end of the day. It's not really, I don't know, maybe some people enjoy it. I remember being tickled as a kid, and then eventually, just because of how insanely aggressive my mentality is, just more or less just not allowing anybody to do it, even though physically I couldn't necessarily. I said this way of putting fear in people somehow, which I don't know that that was my intention, but I was over it fairly. I just remember being over that pretty early on, and nobody could really do it to me. My gigantic, scary father used to put me in a headlock and give me noogies. And, there's really no way to stop that. But beyond that, I wasn't really fucked with after I stood up to the bullies in third grade or whatever. I was mostly left the fuck alone as far as that goes. But to me, of course, it's a psyop. He's one of the most famous people in the entire world. There's no way it's not. Everything he does is a psyop on some level. But, and then with what's in the media, the Epstein, and again, the subconscious mind perfectly decodes all symbols, and this place is never entirely real, and you know, so it's probably an acknowledgement of, look, all these people are trash. It's not just, oh, some of them are trash and some of them, the ones we like, are okay, right? Oh yeah, Diddy, but nobody ever really liked Diddy. I mean, let's be honest. But there wasn't a whole lot of just straight up Diddy fans, because he sort of tried to do some solo stuff here and there. But one of my favorite songs is it Puff Daddy featuring Mace, or is it Mace featuring Puff Daddy? But when Bad Boy was really cooking, I forget which song that is, but I'm not even going to attempt to sing it. But Mace, one of the most underrated rappers of all time, certainly. Anyway, make sure I don't miss my turn up here. Road's in pretty good shape out here. I got to say that. Hopefully the connection is strong. We're out here in the boonies. I did not even think about that till just now, but all right, I guess it's egg yolk drink time. Well, and part of this too was I never had any coffee yesterday. Was out of my normal routine and just never had any. But I won't entirely blame that on the incident at Walmart because it's something I've been thinking about. I notice these things. Anyway, it's all it's all perfectly goddamn delightful to be sure. It's also perfectly goddamn delightful to be sure. And I've had enough of this cost of living and the economy talk. Look, everybody knows what the fuck it is by now. Uh, you know, fucking act accordingly. I have a memory, and I was reading the newspaper, and I used to watch the news in the '80s and the '90s, and bro, what we're going through today, it's never not been this way. It's a boom bust cycle, and it's a phase change technologically to some extent, right? And it's a boom bust cycle, and the system is becoming more efficient at managing the bust cycle. And it's John Nash, it's fucking Nash equilibrium, game theory optimal, supercomputer mathematics is, it's extracting everything there is to extract out of humanity. And it's just what's happening, and it's going to continue to happen. And in the past, it was the same means of extracting resources from the public, and now it's just more sophisticated and it has to continue to become more efficient. When these economies of scale and when these various systems, government, corporations, banking, finance, when it's all predicated on never-ending expansion, perpetual expansion, by the way, what else is perpetually expanding? What I am, unlocking true knowledge of self/self-realization, that indivisible force of what I am, the most super intelligent power source and force of love and creation, authority, abundance, and just energy itself, pure energy. It's always growing, changing, evolving, and expanding. So that's thesis. So in this realm, which is being operated based on the machinations of antithesis, right? Antichrist, that which makes an enemy of what I am, that which, right? That which makes an enemy of what I am, witchcraft, that which. It's right there. People want to talk about spell casting. Okay, then I better, if I'm either, hey, two choices: become a fucking mute and stop fucking talking, or I guess I better, become my own version of spellcaster in some way, right? Careful The Bible, something about careful with the tongue, right? Something along them lines. Mm. Just ran over something on the road. So it would not be a good place to get a flat. We'd be blocking the fucking highway. And born in '75, I've been it's a slavery. It's a psychological slavery with some physical liberty. Oh, that was a skunk. I think we just ran over a motherfucking skunk. Fuck. Goddamn skunk driver. Yeah, we hit a fucking skunk. Motherfucker. Well, that's a bummer. I don't really give a shit about the skunk, but he he unleashed his load right before he exited this world, and maybe I missed him, and I got the spray. I think I got to roll the windows down. Fucking hey. Yeah, he got us. He got us. Direct hit. It might have been I might have direct hitted his ass, and he direct hitted my ass with his ass. Fuck, dude. I'm not that sensitive to smells. That is some potent stuff. Motherfucker. I am sensitive to chemicals in the odors, in the vapors, but brutal. Goddamn skunk driver. Ah, it says we're gonna be there about 4:30. So the only thing that could really wreck us is if we get there, let's say by 5. I'm getting a headache from that. If we get here, say we get there about 5, and if they unload us by 9, that's 4 hours off duty. So that extends us to, well, see, even that only gets us to what, 4 p.m.? No, 6 p.m. We would have started at 4. Yeah, that gets us to 6 p.m. And I'm just not working much beyond 6. I might have to throw up. This is crazy. Because I'd say they got to have me working it by 4 at the latest in the morning, most days, or I'm just not interested. And I've been looking at trucks, and not that I really don't want a truck, but I found one I'd probably buy if I had them, and I've almost got the. I mean, you know, this thing could still be for sale a month from now, but they're asking 30,000, and you never know how, you know, it might only be on the market because they're just too stubborn to drop the price. But I don't remember these. Maybe a 2005 International. I looked at a bunch of them, but I think it might even been a 99 International. I forget which model, but 10-speed manual, and either a Caterpillar. It might have been a Caterpillar engine. Yeah, it was. It was a Cat. It had a Cat in it, and 10-speed manual, which I am able to drive. And you know, I could learn a 13 or an 18, but and only had about 700,000 miles, so they say. I mean, who the fuck knows? But looked like it was in good shape. And best of all, the sleeper. It had a 72-inch sleeper, which a lot of them are way smaller than that in those older trucks. And it was in, like, you could tell, I think somebody like just bought a new sleeper for it at a certain point. It's not the whatever it came with in 1999. Probably some owner operator had it and didn't want to go with the emissions, right? Wanted to have a Cat. And these owner operators, they'll just go buy whatever they want to buy. And then if, you know, if mainly that one owner operator had it and took care of it, you know, or bought it later and then modified it for his own purposes, you know, they don't give a fuck. They'll give some shop $5,000 to put a sleeper on it or whatever. Here's 10 G's, put a sleeper on it. You know, it might be they're asking 20, they're asking 30, and they'll take 27.50 or something, 27.5. I don't know, man. I might be inclined to do that at a certain point, and then I'd have to have a plan, which would be go to the oil field, and then probably have to have enough money to idle that bitch, live in that bitch long enough to, because I've been to, there's nothing in North Dakota, right? You got the Fargo side where I just came from, but once you get out in the oil field areas, there's just nothing out there. You know, what it costs to stay in a hotel or whatever, it's just, or rent a room is just insane. And that was years ago. I'm sure it's only gotten more expensive. So live in the truck long enough to get a company driver job and to learn the job. Local trucks. Oh, okay, I see. I'm getting truck warning signs, but what they're saying is keep moving. Don't drive through our little town, please, on the side roads. So yeah, fair enough. And my GPS, since I pay money for a trucker GPS, it's not sending me that way anyway. That's some bozos trying to use Google Maps. But where was I? Oh yeah, this truck. Because the ones that are like 10,000 to 15,000, even if they don't immediately need tires or whatever, it's the original sleeper, and it's just like, yo, I've been homeless since 2012, and I wouldn't even want to try to live in that motherfucker. I mean, I'm spoiled. I'll admit it. I'm fucking spoiled. This is 2026 Freightliner's pretty fucking nice, I have to say. People make fun of Freightliners, but I've never been a big fan overall. They're starting to win me over a little bit. But anyway, So then go work for a, drive a company truck. So I need to show up with enough money to survive until I start getting paid. And then there's always a chance of getting ripped off. I mean, that's always a possibility. I'm sure there's people who just think, oh, this is some weak bitch greenhorn. And the thing is, yeah, they could rip me off, but I'm not going to keep working. Like I'll just get ripped off and have to take another job. You know, and I've never not gotten paid in trucking, but they can probably just kind of tell, oh, he ain't going for it. You know, we can really only steal one of his checks. He ain't going to keep working. But anyway, and I'd have to probably pay to park it somewhere, although that might not, mainly just to keep it from getting stolen or looted. Figure out some indoor storage. That'd probably be $500 a month. And then learn the job, and then save up or already have saved up enough money to get all because you need all kind of like hydraulic equipment. Like a regular old truck like I'm in doesn't have what you need to. And I'd have to get my endorsement. So I'd probably show up. See, that's the thing is with the Arkansas license, I'd have to get those endorsements before I even went there, which is not a big deal because those are just written tests. So, computer testing or whatever. Get my tanker and I don't know if you have to have hazmat. See, now we're getting into more government entanglement. That's got a background check, which I'm sure I could pass, no problem. But so I need tanker and what am I forgetting? Can't even think of what the other one is. Well, whatever it is. Why can't I think of it? Not doubles, triples, but there's another one. I don't know. Maybe they pull doubles out there. Maybe I do need to get doubles and triples. Hell, I don't even know. But yeah, you need all kind of hydraulics. And you get like a PTO. I forget what that stands for, but it's some kind of like secondary engine that operates certain equipment. Because when I hauled those rice hulls, my truck had a PTO on it because it powered and operated. I believe it was hydraulic also. It operated the walking floor trailer. And, I don't want to just willy nilly slap some shit on there. I'd rather wait and get the good shit and know what to buy. And, since it's North Dakota and, probably by the time, I'd have a chance of getting all my ducks in the row potentially, by winter or whatever. And you got to make sure your truck ain't going to freeze up. You're going to need everything to be gone through and reasonably in working order, right? Because then I could eventually just work when I want to work without having to finagle a bunch of bullshit. I'd be scheduling myself at that point and just, I'd either be working all the time or not working at all. So, I'm ready to take time off, to have the money to do those things. Because right now I could take a month off. The only really drawback would be the logistics. So you got two problems. Is I live in this truck and I don't have access to an automobile unless I rent one, which is I'm considering. I'm not interested in I've lost all interest in maintenance, registration, and this is almost rich guy problems, but it's not. But it's getting to be where I'm really seeing the wisdom in. At a certain point, it may just be easier to make a fuckload of money than it is to try to be frugal and scrimp and save, and but still have like trying to pay for an expensive automobile. It's like, why? Is it really that much more? If I'm not driving it every day, it's not that much more expensive to rent a car necessarily. And if not for my bullshit possessions, which they're not bullshit, but I could just fly to LA, rent a fucking car for a whole month. Yeah, maybe even an electric car. Because it's not like I'll be driving around LA. I'll mostly just be parking the thing on the street and sleeping in it for the most part. And so apparently those Teslas or whatever, and some of the Priuses, I think, are this way, where you can actually, like the heater and the AC works off the battery. And there's, it could be a pain in the ass to charge that thing, I'm sure, but there is some places where you can just park on the street and charge it seemingly for free. Now, how well those work, I have no idea, but worst case scenario, just try to go early in the morning to a supercharger somewhere, or a rapid charger, whatever they are. And people want to poo-poo electric cars, but I mean, it does make sense in a place like LA. I wouldn't want to try to drive that bitch from. So hypothetically, if I moved out of the truck in Chicago, then it's like, what do I do? Throw all my bullshit in storage? Meanwhile, I could rent a car, drive it to LA, but I would still, need to drive it all the way back to Chicago. And that costs money, obviously. Or put most of my stuff in storage and then fly. So I was looking on Expedia, they got a round trip airfare, Chicago to LA, and a rental car for all that for a whole month for like $1,400. Now I'm sure when you check out, there's all kind of taxes and fees gets added on, but let's just call it $2,000. I mean, that's, again, what's it cost to try to stay in a hostel or whatever, because I'm basically treating the car like a hotel room, because I don't want to be in there anyway. It's like, obviously, I don't really give a shit about showers, and I can still go to the shower truck, the shower trailer here and there if I need to. I would be able to rent a room for the night, $150 at the most, where I like to be. Probably $120 here and there if I had to. Versus, let's buy a car, pay for a year of insurance, hope it doesn't break down, hope, you're looking at $5,000, looking at about 5 G's, is it even worth it? I'd say at this point, it's just not worth it. It's easier to live in a truck for 3 to 4 months, even if that's all I can stand, and I can't stand no more. Look, I'm probably just going to keep doing this as long as they'll mostly deal with my sleep schedule. Because I'm just, at this point, I'm really only willing to deviate from my sleep schedule long enough to show my value to the company as a driver. I can't just get hired somewhere and immediately. Although I did with Balkan, because I was so sick, it was just like, look, I just can't. I just more or less refused to work past about 2. But even with them, I think I went probably the first month and just did whatever they asked of me, and just fucking, was a basket case. I think that's what I did. And then finally was just like, look, I can't. I don't think I even told them. I just started more or less shutting down every day and refusing to work past a certain hour. Just made them deal with it. Let me see where we're at and check the GPS here. We're going west. Start heading south. We're just kind of zigzagging across this bitch. And the hours I'm driving out here, hell, I'm going 68 almost the entire time. It's not really. I don't think it's going to take any longer than the interstate would have. Rinsing my mouth out here. If you think about a big rig, man, like especially one that doesn't have a depth system, I can drive it across the country on paper logs, right? If I need to. I don't even know if you can. I guess you could put an ELD in one of those old trucks, but at that point, it'd probably be, since it's legal to do paper, it'd probably just go ahead and do paper logs. But of course, you don't have to worry about any of that in the oil field. But with the cost of living and all of this, and me being by myself and not having a life in the conventional sense, and, if I could buy a truck that's good for the oil field, and which that mostly comes down to, can you get somebody to fix it? Because it's going to break, and it's negative. When it's negative 40 wind chill, you really don't need to be out there in your now your truck's derated because your fucking DEF froze up in the DEF tank, right? Like there's just no reason to even deal with that. And I can absolutely withstand those temperatures as long as my truck's idling. Then it would obviously become a survival situation if the truck broke down. But, I do have enough skills. I do like my chances of surviving for a few days in a blizzard, Although I wouldn't necessarily know how to avoid becoming one with the snowdrift, right? A snowbank. Locals might be like, yeah, he's one of them tough people that talks funny from down south, but he can stand the wind and the temperatures, but yeah, there's a sign, move to Minot. Oh no, move to Milner. I don't even know what that is. Oh, it's somebody trying to get, I guess that's a builder built a subdivision and now he's probably losing his ass. But anyway, I don't know. 2013. Oh, it's a town, I guess. Huh, that's interesting. It said move to Milner. You can be home by now. Either way, like you'd be laughing because I don't really know how to maneuver. I know how to drive in the snow, but I don't really know how to manage this. huge, insane amounts of snow that I'm sure they get at times. Just recently, man, with what's all the snow that the Northeast got, I've never seen so much snow in my life. That was insane. Now, I wasn't there when it was falling. I came after it already fell, but it's just snow everywhere. Just gigantic piles of snow everywhere. Crazy. Standard for those folks, I suppose. But that does seem to be a way to have potentially have some my time to myself in life. So this so-called life, without having to just be destitute or hand to mouth. You know, I will say the chances of me working through the summer are fairly low. Just because it's just too fucking hot in these trucks. Working the schedule I work, it's just too damn hot. You can't sleep when it's that hot. Even if you idle the truck, it's hot. Well, at least I have an excuse for starting out so early because I'm pretty sure I would have had to wait otherwise. Because it's a true thing. Because I was going to try to sleep in longer, and it kind of woke me up in my. I wake up several times usually, but I woke up and about 10:30, but then some. And, I'm waiting to go back to sleep, and then I remembered that I've fueled up, and I was pretty damn close to overweight, if not technically overweight, potentially by a few pounds. Well, and so then of course now I went ahead and the curiosity got the better of me, so I started looking at where are the weigh stations since I'm going back the way I came, but not completely. It's farther west, this town. Like, yeah, there's a weigh station, and my historical data says they're likely to be open. So I was hoping that I could, wouldn't be open. And then someone say, well, why not drive in the daytime then? If you're going to drive around the scales, because that thing they had in the road, they looked like they had scales in the road and a thing that, gets your truck information. So hypothetically, you could have a cop hanging around for whoever might be trying to drive around the scales and have the mobile scales and chase them down. That does happen. So it's way less likely to happen overnight. And I got to keep my record clean. That's paramount. But yeah, I'd probably be golden if I could get out there with a truck, and because I'm sure these companies they get a lot of over the road type drivers that a lot of them are arrogant and they think they know trucking, but it's like, yeah, I don't know anything about the oil field really, other than what I've learned just secondhand, word of mouth, and you know, it is something in people where it's kind of especially for smaller town hard working types. Just this, hey, I'm here, humbly in some way. I don't know this side of trucking, so I want to work for y'all's company long enough to learn what I'm doing out here and to show up with my own truck, but then to take a company job It says something, I think, and with a clean record and, a serious, hardworking person, which again, everybody's, again, that doesn't exist until it's proven, right? And which sort of shows you something about the idea of hard work. It doesn't really exist. It's, the person has to continue to do that, which really a lot of that's just showing up and consistently day in and day out. And then, I'm sure these company jobs, you probably get a lot of the shitty trucks and a lot of the shit work, right? That's all right. So I don't know. Maybe we'll see. We'll see. And then also, although I'm sure it doesn't pay nearly as well, harvest time, you get into a lot of things I also don't know a lot about. Although that walking floor trailer, when I hauled the rice hulls, I believe they also, maybe they haul grain in that too. I'm not exactly sure how that works. But, then you get into the possibility of like seasonal hauling for, agriculture, and then maybe just, again, having enough money to buy a trailer and then just sell it or store it, one of the two. If I could eventually do a certain amount of time in the oil field, maybe a certain amount of time doing the ag stuff, and eventually, and then you know as a single, not single, but just it's just me. I think eventually I could just work half the year, which is you know if the government will leave me alone, then which I suspect that they will, but you never know, right? So now you have the potential to actually, if everything, and again, you never know. All it would take is a couple of breakdowns at the wrong time. It's still quite precarious. There's always a possibility of something happening to put some blemishes on the old driving record. So nothing's guaranteed, but there's at least a possibility. And I'm not even saying I'm going to do any of this, but it sounds doable. And I like train. As a child, apparently, I was attracted to heavy equipment, trains. A lot of these things, and you know, you got the more pretty boy side of things, where for long haul, people kind of get into certain aesthetics, but you know, a lot of times I'm more attracted to just a workhorse that looks kind of bare bones, but has like a lot of capability. Something kind of understated. I like those internationals. It's just, man, the sleepers are usually pretty terrible. To sort of potentially be able to have a decent sleeper on a truck like that with that's a coveted. Those Caterpillar engines are coveted. And there's a lot of people, especially like out in the oil field type of areas, like the mechanics, they don't want to be working on all this new junk either. And look, this is 2026 Freightliner. It's not junk, but um, for over the road long haul. But if you start trying to apply it to other applications, I mean, it's just not as good, right? And see, I'm not even convinced that. I think if somebody knows how to use their locking differentials, I don't. I think the vast majority of what people run into off-roading in these things, this idea that you have to have a manual, I just think that's bullshit, personally. I think really what it comes down to is a lot of the people who only know how to drive automatics, they don't know how to fucking drive off-road, and they get stuck, and then they blame the automatic. The automatic gets blamed. It's like, I don't know, man. I've done a lot of off-roading. I've never gotten stuck. Knock on wood. Actually, the times I've almost got stuck was on goddamn concrete on some angle, trying to back up something or go up something and make a slow speed turn. And because for fuel economy, they, you might have a dead axle on these things. And, if only one fucking tire's getting traction, now get into some wheel spin, trying to go up something, but just lock the diff and then it's fine. The only thing there is you have to drive, it doesn't just, once you lose traction, it's too fucking late. You have to lock that shit in before you lose traction. A lot of people just don't know this. I pulled a guy out my rookie season with Snyder because he was bobtail and I was bobtail. I think we were at a place where they make you disconnect from your trailer. And he got stuck on the fucking snow because he didn't. And this is where going to a proper school to get trained, I don't think he knew what the differential lock was and what it did. And so I'm out there, I take a look at the sheet of ice I'm driving around on, I lock the fucking diff. And he got over into a patch of ice and got stuck. So I, found a strap out of the truck. I think I broke a strap trying to pull him out, but I showed him how the locking diff worked. And once we moved him just enough to get the diff locked, it was no problem. And I mainly was just like, hey, you got to remember to turn this thing off because you'll tear the fucker up. That's the main problem with the diff. I'm bad about forgetting to turn it off. Like, oops. Tearing up the drive tires going around the corners. And eventually you'll tear up the diff itself, apparently. So they say. Man, I had a truck at Sun Transportation Systems, full lockers. Like, what the hell? Talking about overkill. It's nice to have just in case, though. If I ever had to drive through some fucking mud hole, all right, well, pretty sure we're going to make it. I can figure out how to force this bitch into low gear, lock all them diffs. Here I come. And I guess that's really the main thing with a manual is you can put it in fucking low gear and then leave it there and not have to worry about the damn transmission, getting stuck because the transmission decided to go to a higher gear. It's like, well, if the computer gives us access, I'm pretty sure we can manually put this bitch in first and tell it to stay in first. I'm pretty sure that's a thing. Turn the traction control off with full lockers, especially. That's another thing. Imagine getting stuck because you didn't know to turn the electronic traction control off. It's like, yeah, man, I'm going to need a little bit of wheel spin if I have to really put the power down with full lockers to get through a mud hole. You got to know to turn it. But intuitively, you would think, well, you're going to want the traction control. Yeah, not in a mud hole, You don't want electronic stability control in a fucking mud hole. Are you crazy? That's called How to Get Stuck. We trying to power down, Jack. Power Man 5000. But yeah, back to the spiritual topic of course, the economies of Moloch's machine is based on never-ending expansion because Antithesis is attempting, through the subversion of the creative force of what I am, it's aping and mimicking that force. So of course its systems are based on never ending expansion. And that's what these economic cycles are. Now, of course, there's contraction phases within the expansion, but it's still on a overall perpetual base. And that's another reason, as much as the system promotes these ideas of, getting rid of a certain, reducing, the whole Georgia Guidestones notions of maintaining the populace at 500 million. Well, yeah, probably after the technological side takes over a lot of the functionality that humans have had to do historically, right? So it seems to me like, as much as there's been talks of, the so-called elites, wanting to control the population and all of this, and clearly, and I don't even, who knows how many people are actually here, but if it is, 7 billion on its way to 8 billion, well, what's the reason for that exponential expansion in humanity? Well, that it seems to be occurring at the same time as all of this rapid technological transformation, right? On some level. And so if it gets to where the technology can continue to operate the expansion, to mimic, the expansion and creation of the, of what I am, and then you do get into a version of the movie The Matrix where maybe it's 500 million motherfuckers in tanks to power the whole show, right? I mean, I don't fucking know. Sounds plausible to me. Well, you don't see that every day. We just dropped from 65 to 25. Wow. Well, I'll go 30, but there's some ag. Unless that's a bull hauler. Let's see. Yeah, it looks like some version of a grain hauler. Got a bunch of chicken lights. He's waiting for the place to open. He's already there. Early bird gets the worm, as they say. He wants to be first in line to get loaded. And man, in a lot of ways, that job I had in Arkansas hauling rice hulls, that was a perfect job for me, man. And they were bending over backwards because you could tell they were having trouble finding somebody responsible and dependable in that role, because the guy that owned the company had sold out and turned it over to, employee owned. And I could figure it out pretty quick. I was a one truck operation, and he was just using me for pocket money. And, I need a sleeper cab. So they done fucked up when they thought they're going to throw me in some piece of shit or day cab. And it's terrible, man. It was almost undrivable. And yeah, I guess they would have fixed it up if I demanded it, but I'm spoiled. I want my sleeper. What if I, just, I was paying for a motel at the time, but I at least want the option. I need my space. Fuck a day cab, man. Not interested. But then they want to go lying to me. Oh, you can drive that. Didn't even talk to me. Texted me. Oh, you can drive that day cab till we fix your truck. Well, I've already talked to the mechanics. They're not fixing that truck. And I drove it for a week. Said the transmission's going out, and of course that's what it was. The transmission finally took the shit. It was automatic. And Volvo. And they only really had one mechanic worth of shit, and he refused to work on it because I got to knowing him a little bit. and they had two different facilities in Arkansas. He was up there in Rogers, actually, just outside of Rogers. I can't remember the town offhand. Gentry, maybe, in Northwest Arkansas. And he seemed like a cool dude, a little autistic type, you know, late 20s, early 30s, Arkansas boy, but kind of intellectual a little bit, you know. And he said, "Yeah, I refused to work on it." He said, "I won't even work on it." He just wasn't interested in working on it. And I think some of that is they just didn't maintain it properly. He wasn't against Volvos. There were some other Volvos. He was just like, that truck. I was like, well, I like it, you know, but I hear what you're saying. It's got a lot of problems, but, you know, just straight up lied to me. Oh, you can drive it. They're not, but I knew and they knew they weren't fixing, air quotes, my truck. So I just parked it. I parked the rig, said, let me know when my truck's fixed. Never heard. Of course, I knew they weren't going to fix it. So I just called it bluff, basically. Although I realized I just missed my chance for the P brake. That was the town with enough of a wide spot to stop. So oops. It's a drawback to doing these streams sometimes, because there damn sure ain't enough of a shoulder. But we're truck driving, famous last words, but we can hold it for a little while. But yeah, that was a bit of a mistake there. There's 20 miles till the next turn. Surely we can make 20 miles. 19 now. I ain't seen a car yet. Truckers disappear in these. They had a guy disappeared out in Iowa on these kind of roads, and they found his rig like in the middle of the highway, like with the door open, his wallet and his cell phone in the truck. And then eventually they searched the area for he was missing for at least a few weeks. And then they found his body in a field, like within like 7 miles of where they found the truck. And the reality is they absolutely, that now temporary wide spot. See, I couldn't get slowed down fast enough. This might work if I can hustle. It's quickly disappearing, but blocking a little bit of the highway. But not too bad. Easier to ask for forgiveness than permission, as they say. Give me a second. I need to hustle. Oh yeah. Here we go. Let's get out of here. I've looked into, I've watched some YouTube content on these missing, especially the missing truckers. And there's a theme where they disappear, and it's always somebody who's known as super reliable and not just. And this is what I said tongue in cheek on the live streams in the past when I talked about it. I said, well, I don't have to worry because, if somebody that knows me, if they're asked, they'll be like, yeah, it does kind of sound like he's the type that might just willy nilly abandon the rig and wander off. Yeah, he is that type. But it's always somebody they're like never in a million years, and the company is always like, yeah, he's like the most value, he's the most dependable driver we've ever had. It's always a version of that. And sometimes they get discovered in some city far, far away, and they can't remember who the fuck they were. It's like their memory got wiped somehow. Or when they're found dead, it's like they'll be found dead not too far from their truck, but it's almost always an area where it's almost a guarantee that the local whoever search party searched that area. So then it's like, well, did something happen to him somewhere else, and then they just sort of dropped him off, more or less back where they found him. Some might say aliens or whatever, but who the fuck knows? What y'all think of that? Oh, we have a live chat. What's up, Mental Pancakes? I forgot we had a live chat. What's up, homie? If they get froggy, I'm going to turn it off, but we got one for now. But there's a lot of trucking jobs out there. If a person's not dependent on it to try to raise a family or whatever, where it's just kind of whoever shows, especially if a person has their own truck, just show up and shut the fuck up and do the job, right? And go be, yeah, he's weird, but who cares? He shows up and works. We're driving around the scales, Mental Pancakes, a little bit. Of course, the right when I turned off the interstate, they had the shit buried in the highway, and I'm pretty sure this something flashed and took my picture and got the truck information. So whatever. We're driving in the middle of the night specifically to make it less likely to get interdicted. But the closer we get to 6 a.m., we're not driving past any way stations. I've only ever got overweight one time, and it's when I worked for ART Transportation doing reefer in Van Buren, Arkansas, and sometimes I'd get preloads. So I went and picked up I think we had a preload on our yard. I was coming back from home time maybe. And one of our bozo local day cab drivers dropped the fucking thing in the interstate. Or I'm sorry, he dropped it across the highway hilariously. I don't know if this was that time or not, but blocked the whole highway for a while. So, but anyway, I was able to get around and make it into the place. But so I didn't completely understand how these scales work. And so when I picked the trailer up, I hadn't weighed it. And my plan was to just take it and weigh it at the first place I passed. And so I almost started to go kind of out of the way to, there's a Love's truck stop just north of there. But that wasn't the way I was ultimately going, but it wasn't too far out of the way. but it's real hilly, and I didn't want to drag that heavy bitch. I didn't really feel like dragging it up and down them hills, but to a Loves that I'm not a big fan of, that particular Loves I'm quite familiar with. And actually, this is where me and my dad were famously camping out in that heat wave. It's right by that Loves up there off of what used to be I-540. It's now I-49 in Northwest Arkansas. But um, so I didn't, unbeknownst to me, I busted a right turn out of there and then just got on I-40. And my plan was to stop at the first truck stop and then make sure the axles were legal. And it turned out that when I busted that right, I went over scales that were built into the highway. And I'm sure it was there just because our trucking company was there. And then it sent the information to the Oklahoma fucking way station just across the border, the port of entry. So they already knew I was coming and immediately pulled me in and were just like, hey, basically they told me, hey, you're overweight, buddy. We knew you was coming. And I'm like, oh, I didn't even know that's how that worked. And then I was like, well, I almost went to Love's and up there and I had to explain which one I meant. And they're like, oh, yeah, yeah. And I said, in which case they still would have gotten the heads up. It's just I would have had a different weight by the time I got out there. But they didn't. They basically just wrote me like a warning, which was more or less like, hey, just the next time you go across some scales, it's all electronically going to know if you actually stopped and made this thing legal or not. So they're basically like, as long as you fix it up the road, you're all good. That's where you get into some of the southern thing or Oklahoma. It's like they're strict. They're very strict, but they're also fair. It's like, yeah, man, we get it. We understand, what you're up against, but you better fucking fix it. You better make it right. Don't think you're going to just take it all the way there and be lazy. I'm like, yeah, fair enough. Yes, sir, will do. But they wrote me out a piece of paper at least. I don't think that ever went on my permanent record. But I asked him what would have happened if because I said, I almost went up to that Love's, and he said, oh, you still would have got pulled in over here. We just would have put you on the scale, and and everything would have been fine. He said, yeah, oh yeah, we were looking for you. I was like, damn, I had no idea. I had no idea. Did not know that was a thing. Now you know. I know. Like I said, we're definitely in that gray zone where if we're a pound or two over, you know, probably not. By now, but yeah, definitely could have been 50 pounds over potentially. The gross, since I filled up with fuel. So I went for those joining late. I've went to the wrong fucking town. I went 200 miles past where I was supposed to go because I had a mix up on where to. It's my fault. I just made a mistake. Pulled the boner. Now it ended up working out in my favor in the long run potentially, but here we are. Where are my napkins? I blow my nose. Yeah, buddy. But anyway, back to this idea of cost of living. Oh, there's a deer. It's funny. I was thinking. I've just had the thought about there could be deer out here, and then I just saw one. Funny how that works. But I think it also shows the level of brainwashing that people even think that things were somehow better economically in the 80s. They weren't better. It's just, I'll tell you the main thing in the 80s, especially early 80s. Your average working American had zero, and I want to be clear, zero access to consumer credit. And I mean none. Now, some will say, well, you would hear the old people talk about you pay it out over time. Yeah, that's your Good Times, the TV show. It's in their theme song. Easy credit ripoffs. That's the idea of we need a couch, and they'll let you pay it out on time, but you end up paying triple or whatever. That's what that is. Is that a pull off? There's a turnout, but we don't fit. But that's a different thing. That's your Klarna, basically. That's your, you know, uh, whatever they call those things. I forget. There's a name. There's a name for that. But Klarna or y'all know what I mean. Where people are charged. They're buying burritos on credit or whatever. And they try to say it's interest free, but it's not really the case. But either way, your average person couldn't get a credit card. It just wasn't available. Would the bank loan them? Could they get a car loan? Maybe, perhaps. Now, again, you still got your buy here, pay here versions of things, but um, that now that's some version of getting a lemon, perhaps. And I remember one of these. I got to listen to a bunch of audiobooks about some of these guys who went to Vietnam or whatever, maybe even the Korean War. But like this one guy talked about, and maybe he was in Korea and then also in Vietnam, but he talked about it's like early in his, he went to one of these car dealers way back in the day. This would have been 60s or 70s, I guess. And he negotiated the price of the car, but it was based on the idea that he was going to go through their in-house financing. So the dealership was making no money on the cash price of the vehicle. They're making money on the interest. You pay it out over time. Because there was no version of, oh, we've got a 750 credit score or whatever. So if the interest rates are favorable, you might be able to go to the new car dealer and get a promotion and it's 2.5% interest or whatever. I'm telling you, that just simply did not exist back in the 60s and 70s. Now, for rich folks, sure, they always play by a different set of rules. But so what they didn't know is that the dealership didn't know that this GI he'd been saving his pay, and he had the cash. So he went out and made him a deal on some old 1950 something Ford, maybe early on in Vietnam, and he'd already saved up his pay. And so he made the deal and then was like, okay, get it ready. I'll be back tomorrow or whatever. And then showed up the next day with the cash on the barrelhead and was talking about how pissed off the salesman was because, he realized that the salesman was pulling a scam, but then he got scammed, and then the idea of, well, you got to kind of keep to your word. And so now is the dealer going to risk the word getting out that he made a deal and shook hands on it and then reneged on the deal because remember the GI didn't agree to the financing. He agreed to the purchase price of the vehicle. What the salesman's banking on is that the guy's going to end up needing to pay it out over time. That's what he's banking on. And so you're going to end up paying double, or they'll repo it, and then maybe every once in a while somebody steals it. Of course, with him being working for the government, being government property, well, then the dealer would have recourse through the government, the Universal Code of Military Justice. That's something that the citizens can appeal to, apparently. They're taken very seriously. So they say. Excuse me, pardon me. Ugh. Goodness. But anyway, so nowadays it's just standard. And in fact, most Americans will, and I grew up in the old days of, live below your means and it's bad to owe money, right? But yeah, a person, if they had what was viewed as a secure job, sure, they could get a mortgage and they could, under the right circumstances, yeah, they could get a loan on a car. But there wasn't all this, all this other foolishness, and whatever there was quite limited, And nowadays, look at, what's the level of just credit card debt of your average dual income household? I think you could look this up. It's probably $50,000. So that's the main difference between now and the old days. Because remember, inflation in 1980 was way worse than today's inflation. And I hear Gen Z and millennials going, "Oh, it's the worst, unprecedented, worst inflation of all time." I'm like, I'm 50. It's not even the worst inflation of my lifetime. Like, what are you talking about? This ain't, I hate to break it to you folks. This is nothing. Yeah. The groceries have skyrocketed. I agree. You've cars. Yeah. This is nothing. If it's actually, if it does become when people want to talk about hyperinflation and all this ain't that. I don't know if y'all know that. This is not that. Now, it is some version of Zimbabwe bucks, clearly, but it's becoming that. It's like an early version of Zimbabwe bucks. I'll give you that. But there's a long way to go to match what went on from 65 to about 80. And you can make fun of the cities all you want. They recover first. So, the more rural, backwards areas. I mean, do you really think the economy was booming in 1987? It wasn't. Could a person go get a factory job and if they live below their means, feed and clothe their families? Yeah, absolutely. If the man was willing to show up to work every day, sure. If he wasn't a drunk piece of shit like a lot of them were, and that's another fantastical romantic notion, is this idea that just every man given the opportunity is going to go punch a clock in a fucking factory all day, every day, doing a monotonous, mindless job. Have you ever worked in a factory on an assembly line? I have, not for very long, but I did it. The idea that people are going to do that for 30 years. Yes, some will. Many won't. But oh, blame the system. It's the system's fault. Yeah, in a way it is, but in a way, a lot of people aren't going to get the job done, and nor should they, if you ask me. And they were clearly being exploited for their labor back then. And then, as we know, unions is a bad word, but look at UPS. They're going through this. Apparently, they're going through a second round of buying out the drivers, and all that is that their benefits packages and what they're guaranteed in the contract is so attractive, and that with all these layoffs and all this corporate restructuring to maintain a never-ending series of record profits, um, what's going on is it's since UPS presumably has a lot of cash, I'm guessing, because of the nature of their business, they'll offer the drivers a buyout package, right? And a lot of them will take it. And then the union is suing UPS over it, which they pretty much have to. But the people that want the buyout, now they're going to be mad. Now they're mad at the union. Well, the reality is, yeah, are unions corrupt and have problems? Of course they are. Listen, the workers, no matter how corrupt the union gets, the workers always better off being represented than not represented. Because what you're talking about is it's union representation or no representation. It's always better to be represented than not represented, as far as in a corporate sense. It's never not better. Just how that works. How the worker in this country ever got sold that bill of goods is beyond me. You want to talk about mind control and this idea of fighting for freedom. Look at all those people that supposedly fought for representation in employment. Only a couple of generations later, that for Americans to mostly turn their back on the very concept of the union. Oh, well, the union's bad and we don't want to pay dues. It's like, okay, well, still better than not being represented at all, or less bad. Having some blueberries. Here's some town. Farming town looks like. The rare seeded grapes, seeded red grapes. Oh, yeah. pretty nice gym. There's some nice equipment in there. They did not have near enough space though for the amount of equipment. I used to be a big into weightlifting. Pretty nice stuff in there. Need about double the space of what they had. Oh yeah. Old Scotty Bear, that dude that's he's in company training. I guess they do a different style than when I went through training with Snyder. This company they've integrated the CDL school with the company training because the law changed a few years ago to allow that to happen. He went live too late. I'd already gone to sleep, so I caught up on that this morning. He seems worried, but I'm pretty sure he's going to make it. And I don't think there's going to be an economic boom, but there's definitely a shift to, American-born truckers. And I think I see it as almost purely economic. The more people get squeezed and the more the job market sucks. But let's face it, it always sucks. When does it not ever? It always sucks. Oh, shit. I missed a turn. Fucking road's temporarily not paved. Holy shit. All right, we're back to pavement. A little stretch of gravel there. What was I saying? And I predicted this that more and more homeless people were going to start figuring out they can do long haul trucking and live in the truck. He's one of those. That's basically what he's trying to do. And some of these companies are definitely in position to take advantage of it. He was surprised by the number of women in the class. And so now I think he's got a skewed. He's starting to think there's a lot of women in trucking, which there's definitely women in trucking, but there's not nearly as many as he's probably led to believe. Because most of the old heads are males, but of the ones who come into the industry, there's a lot of women for sure in the last, I don't know, 10 years or so. Road's getting a little. And it's funny because, now Gen Z starting to figure out, they're hearing from these old fogies like me talking about, well, when I was in the 90s, you know, I could quit my job and walk across the street and just walk in and they would hire me. Now, that was true to some extent, and I did versions of that, but, part of that is I'm good at selling myself. I know how to talk to people, right? Like there's a certain skill set, you know, not everybody was willing to do that sort of thing necessarily, but the shy version was much more to just kind of go around town getting applications and then bringing them back and dropping them off, and then just I could sort of just talk them into hiring me a lot of the time, or not, but number one, this is all low level shit work, retail, gas station, fast food, if that's what I never worked fast food, but well, Pizza Hut. I did pizza a few months at Pizza Hut once. I was already grown. I was with ex-wife number two working at fucking Pizza Hut for a few months. Whatever it takes. But you still had to show up and actually work. I mean, some of that is I didn't walk in the door and lie to them about how great of a worker I am. Some of that is I walked in, made eye contact, said it basically, hey, I'm here. I show up on time. I do the fucking job. And, how about it? Versus, I find it to Gen Z with this, not slaving away for corporations and the don't do way too much work compared to the wage. But at the same time, there's not a version of walking in and just getting hired if and be the type of person who will do the minimum, right? Because the person who will do the minimum, fuck, this road is fucked. Wow. I have to go slower just based on these bumps. That was, so we're going to damage the rig out here. Oh, my goodness. Bouncy, bouncy. Fuck the alignment up, potentially. Slowing down to 55. Man, wow. Crazy, dude. You know it's bad when you can basically see the fucking, and it's all the way across the whole road. Dude, brutal. Excuse me. Hang on, let me mute the mic. Woo. And so, yeah, maybe that was an advantage, but I still had to show up and bust my ass. I couldn't, I'm not in crazy, I'm not actual fucking psychopath who would, give them a sales job and then show up and be a terror. Like, I'm going to be one of the better workers, if not the best worker, pretty quick. I'm going to give them their money's worth. I mean, fuck. I would work at the gas station and it was real busy near the college and I think I see a car coming finally. There's a car back there. And behind me. Maybe he'll pass us because we're going slow as fuck. I'm 50. He's trying not to tear the truck up. It's just so bad. I'm like bracing myself and almost like a jockey. I'm kind of like, setting up in the saddle a little bit, absorbing the shock with my legs. That's what she said. But anyway. What was I going to say? I'd come in on every once in a while on my day off when I was normally working that day, and there'd be a line out the fucking door, man. We didn't have no line when I was working there. You crazy? Line? You nuts? I said, "What are you doing in there on your day off?" Yeah, I've always been a bit of a convenience store person. I'll admit. How do you think I got that job? It was my family business growing up, convenience store. But more fruit. Hang on. Where is it? Where is it? There it is. Apricots and pears. Woohoo! Right. We get to turn. Maybe the crazy holes are over with. Crazy potholes. Almost like a low water bridge at a certain point. But yeah, do these youngins have the focus and the mental fortitude to show up and actually work 8 hours? Because a lot of people didn't. It's not it. We do ourselves a disservice. That was 93. My freshman year of college, 93, 94, and I felt like everybody I knew my age was some hard worker. You know, there wasn't enough gas station jobs to go around. It was like everybody could go work at a gas station. Kablam! Goodness. Some of these people, there's something going on in their personal life that they want to do. They're not going to work. And it's like, yeah, it sucks to have to work, but when I'm scheduled to work, I'm going to motherfucking work for the most part. Maybe once a year, call them and say, hey, I ain't coming today or tomorrow or whatever. Oh, really? Why not? Personal. If they want to know further, I said personal, man. It's none of your business. I'm not going to be there. I knew I wasn't going to get in trouble. Oh, we got to do this. It's like, what are you talking about? I'm not going to be there. Leave me alone. What's my attendance? What's my attendance been up until this point? 100%? Fuck off. Oh, yeah. Good stuff. Still got some watermelon left. Well, at the risk of jinxing it, I'm pretty impressed that the signal's held up this long out in the boonies. Plug my phone into charge here. And do all phones just have god awful battery life these days? I mean, not all of them, but it seems like anything that's considered higher end or expensive. I don't know. I've only really had, I guess this is the first kind of higher end phone I've ever had, but the old Pixel 9 Pro XL. And, I researched it, so I already knew the battery life was going to be bad. I mean, this is particularly bad. I just rapid charge it, 4 times a day or whatever. I already charged it once today. I don't know. But anyway, I guess I've rambled enough. I can't think of too much else. Uh, Shout out to 12 people in the house. I would stick around longer if I felt like I could continue, but bye.